Thank you, Congresswoman Sanchez, for that. Now I'm pleased to introduce Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. When I was growing up, probably long before many of you, I watched a movie, and then there was a TV show called The Odd Couple. In The Odd Couple, there were two people that were quite different, but cared a great deal for each other and worked together. Congressman Rohrabacher and I have forged that kind of relationship. People don't understand it, but we are close friends, and I am honored. And we work together on many issues. I am honored to introduce now Congressman Dana Rohrabacher.
Which one of us is on? Wow. All right. Mr. Ambassador, I want to thank you for joining us today. And let me just note, there's nothing that's been said so far that I disagree with. And I am a very proud member of the Royce Freedom Rangers as our boss there, as the chairman of the committee, because we have made a commitment there, and Ed is providing incredible leadership. I want to point out that this is not political. This is not a political issue. We're talking about the very heart and soul of our country, what we need as Americans. We do work together, Democrats and Republicans. I point out, for example, we have Luke Correa sitting here, and let me note, he is no longer in public office, but he's here because he believed in the things that he was talking to you about when he was in public office. So, Luke, thanks for giving your activism. So let me just go through a couple of specifics for the ambassador, rather than giving you if you haven't been inspired so far by what you've heard, I'm not going to add anything to that. So let me make sure that we have some specifics down. I think that if we do move forward with a different relationship to the government in Vietnam, it has to be step by step, and we have to have steps that we can understand, measurable steps. Things that they're going to have to do some things. And what I would suggest, perhaps, you start off with things that they could easily do if indeed they have a change of heart about the type of government that they want to impose in Vietnam. I would suggest, for example, Mr. Ambassador, that we have demand, number one, a list of, yes, American political prisoners, American prisoners of war that were there, and we know that they kept some after the war. This has been a phony debate as to whether they did. They kept some Americans, but they also kept thousands of Vietnamese who had allied themselves with the Americans, and we need an accounting of all those people, both the Vietnamese who were siding with us and the American troops that were there. We need an accounting of what happened to them after the war. And that's Canadian folks have relatives that just disappeared, and you don't know. Well, we can bring an end to that era by putting some light on that, and they should be able to do that. Communist governments are very well known for keeping very accurate records on these people that they've murdered over the years. And number two, we need statements, just policy statements by the Vietnamese Communist Party, stating that they no longer believe that religion is a hostile force within the society, and that they are withdrawing their objections to religious faith. We need them to make sure that they recognize, another step, that someone has a right to an opposition newspaper. Then they can say, we believe that people should have an opposition party. And these are things that step by step they can tell us and show us that they want to have better relations with us, because they're reclaiming the legitimacy of government itself. We Americans believe that government, and I say we Americans, we come from every ethnic group and every race and every religion. This place is especially proud of that. But we Americans believe that government only has the rights and the powers that are given to them by the consent of the governed. So we need to make sure that we insist that there be free newspapers, okay? Let there be a proclamation that anyone today in Vietnam that wants to have a newspaper will be free to do so. Or, next step, if there are people who would like to organize a political party, they are free to do so. We need to have these specific announcements and pronouncements by that government. This doesn't cost them anything. If they don't intend to do it, let's not pretend to ourselves that they're going to respect human rights if they can't make these steps one little step at a time. So I'm anxious to hear from our Vietnamese American brothers and sisters here, some of the suggestions they have. That's the suggestion I have. Let's make it real. Let's have a new relationship with Vietnam, but let's not pretend that there are reforms going on when there aren't. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you all, both Congressman Rohrabacher, Congresswoman Sanchez, and Congressman Royce. I'm not going to take much more time. We are really here to listen to our ambassador, who is very gracious, coming not only just to this today, to this town hall community meeting, but spending really 3 days in Little Saigon to understand what our needs are. He's been a great champion of human rights. He has been open and responsive to our needs, and I'm very, very pleased to introduce now the ambassador, also known as the president. Ambassador Ted Osius.
Xin chào quý vị và các bạn. Cảm ơn đã mời tôi đây hôm nay. Và trước hết tôi muốn giải thích tại sao tôi sẽ nói tiếng Việt với giọng Bắc. Bởi vì lần đầu tiên khi tôi đã sang đến Việt Nam, tôi đã học với một giáo viên tên là Bác Hiền, giáo viên của miền Nam. Và lúc đó tôi đã nói với giọng Nam. Và sau khi chuẩn bị lần này để trở lại đến Việt Nam, tôi đã học với 2 giáo viên của Hà Nội. Và họ đã dạy tôi giọng Bắc. Và bây giờ xin lỗi tôi nói với giọng Bắc. Để hiểu cả 2 giọng và miền Trung và Nghệ An và miền Tây, các giọng của tiếng Việt không sao. Và khi chúng ta có cơ hội để trao đổi ý kiến, chúng ta có thể nói bằng tiếng Anh và bằng tiếng Việt, giọng Bắc, giọng Nam. Làm sao? Tôi nhớ bà Sanchez đã nói về sếp của tôi, ông đại sứ cũ tên là Pete Peterson, và tôi rất là tôn trọng Pete Peterson. Ông ấy là bản thân và ông ấy là đại sứ tuyệt vời, và tôi cố gắng rất nhiều để theo ông ấy, và ông ấy đã tôn trọng quý vị và các bạn rất nhiều. Và đó là lý do ông ấy đã bắt đầu truyền thông này để sang đây, và mỗi đại sứ đã sang đây sau đó để trao đổi ý kiến và để học nhiều của quý vị và các bạn. Tôi sẽ bắt đầu để nói một chút về nhân quyền, và sau đó tôi sẽ cố gắng giải thích tại sao tôi lạc quan về vấn đề này. First of all, in 2013, our 2 presidents, the presidents of Vietnam and the president of the United States, signed a comprehensive partnership agreement. And they made a core pillar of that agreement human rights. And it is clear to everyone in the Vietnamese government that respect for human rights is the basis on which we can build a real partnership. In my embassy, everyone carries this little card. I always carry this little card. I am a human rights officer. Everyone in my embassy is a human rights officer. It's not just a job for one person. It's a job for all 900 of us in the embassy and in the consulate. And on this card is written examples of demonstrable progress on human rights. And there are specific requests that we make of the Vietnamese government. My friend Dieu Khai is here today. This card, we haven't changed it quickly enough because we were asking for his release. He's already released. But you know what? We're not satisfied if Dieu Khai is released and someone else is put in prison right behind him. That is not the way the United States works. We don't believe that you can export your problems and then fill in behind by putting more people into prison. That is not a satisfactory way for us to work. So what our request has been, and everybody understands this in the Vietnamese government, is systemic change. That means legal change. That means bringing Vietnam's laws into conformity with its international commitments and with its 2013 Constitution. Right now we're engaged in a very complicated process with Vietnam to change the criminal code and the criminal procedure code and the law on religion. Will we succeed? I don't know. I don't know whether we'll be able to have those laws changed as much as I would like or we here would like. I don't know. But I will try. And my team will try. And we will do everything we can to push the Vietnamese to keep changing those laws, to bring them in accordance with the commitments that they have made. And let me say something about the role of Congress in this process. You see here before you 4 individuals who care deeply about human rights in Vietnam. Their careers show, their records show how much they care. The administration and members of Congress don't always agree. That's okay. We don't have to agree on every point. When they write to the president, when these members of Congress write to the president, or push the president, or push the administration, it helps me. Every time I hear from you about your concerns, every time I hear from members of Congress about concerns, it helps me because I go to the leaders of the government and I have this card and I say, it's a choice for you. You have a choice. Do you want to continue to integrate into the world community? Do you want to grow your economy? Do you want to expand your trade? Do you want to have a good trade relationship with the United States? Do you want to have a security relationship with the United States? All this is possible. Or do you want to put more people in prison? Do you want to put more bloggers in prison? What do you think will benefit your country the most? Putting some bloggers in prison or boosting your economy? Putting some bloggers in prison or making sure your young people are educated? Throwing more people in prison or having a full relationship with the greatest nation on earth, the United States? So the reason I am optimistic, there are a couple of reasons. One is how much I've seen change in 20 years. When I first went to Vietnam to work for Đại Sứ Pete Peterson, there was no internet. There was no civil society in Vietnam. And today, there are 40 million people in Vietnam who use the internet. There are 30 million people in Vietnam who use Facebook. We have 200,000 of those people who are connected to us at the embassy via Facebook. And I read comments every day from those people. And many of them are young people. Vietnam is a very young nation. And you know what they express to me all the time? They express their hopes for the future. They express their hopes that Vietnam will be freer and more prosperous, stronger, independent, a country that respects human rights and the rule of law. That's what they tell me every day. They don't say, oh, we would like to be more repressed. We would like to be more like China. We would like to be isolated from the world. No, that is not what those young people want. Those young people want to be connected to the world. And I think we owe them we owe them to do as much as we can to help them to stay connected to the world. The chairman mentioned that 92% of the people in Vietnam want a closer relationship with the United States. And let me emphasize, that's 92% of the young people, 92% of the older people, 92% from Mien Bắc, 92% from Vietnam. There's no division on this issue. Vietnamese are not divided on whether they want a closer relationship with the United States. When they list what countries are most important to them, they say United States. And about half that number say Japan. And about half that number say Russia. And a very small number of people say China. So what does that tell me? What the people of Vietnam are trying to decide what kind of a country that they want to have in the future. I don't think that tells me they want to be like the Chinese with less freedom. It tells me they want to be like us with more freedom. And I think that we have an obligation. I feel it very powerfully. And I feel it today in particular because I face you, because you know what the suffering has been. You know from your families, you know from your own experiences how difficult it has been. So I feel that responsibility. I feel that responsibility, and I will do all I can to keep moving forward in that direction. Why else am I like Quan? Why else am I optimistic? See this little pin? It says 20 years. For 20 years ago, when I was working for first Chargé d'Affaires de St. Anderson, and then Pete Peterson, that's when we established diplomatic relations. This year, we have had an extraordinary number of people going back and forth between our two countries. I had the honor to host former President Clinton a few days ago. I was on that trip as well in 2000, that historic trip to Vietnam. And I had the honor of welcoming the president and former president. And he said, you know, when we decided 20 years ago that we Americans would accept you, Vietnamese, and you Vietnamese decided that you would accept us, that set us free. And I thought that was a powerful way to look at it. Now, did that set everybody free? No. No, it did not. And I think President Clinton understands that there's still a long, long way to go, because he talked about how much progress we hope for. But 3 cabinet members from the United States have visited Vietnam this year. 7 members of the Politburo will visit the United States before the end of this year. When Nguyễn Trong, the Tổng Bí thư, when he went to the Oval Office, that was a first. There's never been a Tổng Bí thư of Đảng Cộng sản has gone to the Oval Office before. Was going to the United States before. And when he sat in the Oval Office with the President of the United States for an hour and a half, you know what the President of the United States talked with him about? Human rights, the rights of workers, the importance of freedom of association, the importance of freedom of religion, the importance of free speech and a free internet and free exchange. I was very proud to hear my president directly, politely, but directly and firmly say that this is what needs to happen for us to have the kind of relationship that we should have. They talked about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We have some disagreements within the United States. I don't have to tell you, there are many disagreements within the United States about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. My view is that this is a tool to bring about change. It's an important tool that can bring about change in Vietnam and in all the 12 countries that are part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We have made clear to the Vietnamese there are no 2 standards for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There's only a high standard when it comes to labor rights or protection of the environment. There's only one standard, and it's very high, and every country must meet it. And if Vietnam wants to be part of the TPP and benefit from TPP, Vietnam has to meet those high standards too. And we have a different kind of a relationship than when I was in Vietnam working for Pete Peterson 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we had an annual trade of $450 million. This year, our annual trade surpassed $36 billion, and I think it's going to be over $40 billion next year. Last week, we concluded 2 deals that involved selling $13 billion worth of Boeing airplanes to Vietnam Air and Vietjet. But even more important than that, we have a new relationship on something that really matters for the future, and that's education. When I was first in Vietnam, there were less than 1,000 Vietnamese students who studied in the United States each year. Today, there are 17,000 young Vietnamese studying in the United States. A few days ago in New York, a license was granted to Fulbright University, Vietnam. New American-style, not-for-profit, merit-based university where academic freedom is the absolute basis of everything that will be done. An independent board and a guarantee from the top levels, from the Tổng Bí thư, from the Chủ tịch Nhà nước, from Mr. Zoom, that there will be academic freedom. Does that mean it will be easy to make it all happen? No. But 20 years ago, we established Fulbright Economic Teaching Program, and for 20 years, they have been teaching modern economics to officials throughout the country. Modern economics in a communist country. The kind of economics that you need to understand if you want to prosper. And we have built such a strong track record with Fulbright Economic Teaching Program that the leadership of Vietnam realizes that the only way to go forward is to have transparency and accountability and be part of the world, the global economy. And they know that there's a price they have to pay to be part of it, and I believe they are willing to pay that price. That's why I'm optimistic. Now, it's my job to be optimistic. The only way I can lead my embassy is if I'm hopeful. I know that there are going to be many, many problems. I know that there will be times that we'll go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I know that there will be many individual problems, and I hope you will raise those with me today. And I will do my best. I promise you I will do my best. But I think that we should keep our eye on the long term. Something like Fulbright University is an investment in the future of Vietnam. And I think we should keep our eye on how that country can change over time so that its people can be happier, more free, so the country can be stronger, more prosperous, more independent, and be a country that respects the rule of law and human rights. Thank you very much.
Kính thưa quý vị, chúng tôi sẽ có cái microphone để nhận những câu hỏi của quý vị, và quý vị nào cần có cái nhu cầu để thông dịch thì chúng tôi sẽ thông dịch cho, và nếu không thì cũng không cần thiết. Nhưng mà trước khi mình bắt đầu cái phần hỏi đáp, xin trước hết được cái sự thông cảm cũng như là của tất cả quý đây vì số quan khách rất là đông. Cho nên nếu mà chúng tôi có thiếu sót, quên quý vị nào thì xin kiên nhẫn và cho chúng tôi thời gian để được phép mời các vị đó. Và tôi xin, tại vì chúng ta có 2 bên quan khách đó, cho nên chúng tôi cũng sẽ mời một vị bên đây rồi mời một vị bên kia, rồi chúng tôi qua lại như thế nào. Và chúng tôi cũng xin phép là quý vị nào chúng tôi thấy trước thì chúng tôi sẽ đặt câu hỏi vào trước. Và xin trước hết tôi lúc nãy khi chúng tôi bắt đầu tôi nhận thấy là có anh Phát Bùi cũng có giơ tay trước, cho nên chúng tôi xin được phép mời anh Bùi Thế Phát, chủ tịch cộng đồng người Việt quốc gia Nam Cali xin, và chúng tôi cũng xin phép là như vậy. Vì cái thời gian ngày hôm nay chúng ta cũng rất là giới hạn, cho nên khi quý vị đặt câu hỏi chúng tôi có một cái yêu cầu là nếu được quý vị đi trực tiếp và đặt cái câu hỏi của quý vị, thay vì có cái phần phát biểu và đặt câu hỏi, vì chúng ta không có thời gian cho cái phần phát biểu, cho nên xin phép quý vị là giúp cho ban tổ chức trực tiếp đặt câu hỏi của quý vị để chúng ta dành nhiều thời gian cho câu hỏi. Xin cảm ơn quý vị và xin mời anh Bùi Thế Phát có câu hỏi đầu tiên.
Vâng, và để theo đúng cái yêu cầu của anh Lý Bình Phong và ban tổ chức, chúng tôi sẽ bỏ cái phần phát biểu và chúng tôi xin gửi cái phần phát biểu đó cho ông Đại sứ Ted Osius, và chúng tôi đi thẳng vào vấn đề đặt câu hỏi. I will do this in English so that the member of the Congress can follow us as well. We do not need to talk about the continuing violation of human rights and the grave condition of millions of people in Vietnam, because that we already know. We do not need to talk about that. But here's our concern. There has been very, very little progress. Of course, there are a lot more trade, and as you mentioned, $37 billion in between the Vietnamese, between Vietnam and U.S. And there are many more tall buildings comparing to before 1975. Yes, we acknowledge that. But outside of that, there has been very little progress in human rights, in the basic freedoms, especially the freedom of religion and freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. We know very clear that the trade, the prosperity that bring about by the trade between Vietnam and U.S. only benefit a very few, maybe $1 million. But what about the benefit for the other 89 million people, the poor people, the people who do not have, who is incapable of defending themselves with the oppression of the secret police and the dictator government? So my question is this: trying is a good thing, but it will not bring about important changes. We got to have carrot and the stick. We got to have penalties in the TPP, so that if the Vietnam government continue to break their promises, as they have always done with the WTO, what will you do in order to assure that?
Trước khi ngài đại sứ trả lời câu hỏi, chúng tôi cũng xin nhắc quý vị đặt câu hỏi là chúng tôi sẽ rất là yêu cầu quý vị giới hạn cái 30 giây để đặt cái câu hỏi của mình, và chúng tôi sẽ giữ nguyên cái nguyên tắc đó để chúng ta có nhiều thời gian. Xin mời đại sứ Ted Osius.
For one thing, every single chapter of the Trans-Pacific Partnership has a provision for enforcement. And they have strong enforcement provisions. You can't keep reaping the benefits of the Trans-Pacific Partnership unless you fulfill your commitments. That's true whether it's environment, it's true whether it's labor, it's true no matter what. But I would take a little bit of an issue with your overall characterization of trade having no effect on the way people's lives are lived. I think the fact that we have had an opening between our two countries, that we've had normalization, that we've had the bilateral trade agreement and included Vietnam in the World Trade Organization, has had an impact. It's not as much as we would like. There is nowhere near as much religious freedom as we would like. There's terrible restrictions on freedom of speech. But one thing that is changing, and I think this is very important, there was no civil society before to speak of. There were only very tightly monitored groups. Now there is a civil society that is growing in Vietnam. And there are these connections that people have via the internet that allow them to speak more freely than ever before. There is a risk in engaging. We take a risk when we decide that we're going to engage economically with Vietnam because they might not fulfill all of their commitments. My belief, and there's disagreement in the leadership of the United States on this, but my belief is that that risk is worth taking. That engagement is a risk worth taking, and that if you tie our two peoples together more through the private sector, through more tourists going back and forth, more students going back and forth, we're pushing very hard for direct flights between our two countries. If you have a direct flight between Los Angeles and Saigon, and more people passing back and forth, do you think that will have an impact on Vietnam society? I think it will. You are right to point out that the benefits from this trade are not shared equally. One of the things I worry about is that today in the development of Vietnam's economy now, there's some very wealthy people. There are a small number of very wealthy people who control a big part of the economy. And I think that's a worrisome trend. The Vietnamese, when they think about what kind of economy they'd like to have, they often look to South Korea as an example. Well, South Korea has chaebols, they have conglomerates controlled by just a small number of people. That's a little bit worrisome. But you know what South Korea also has? It has enormous connectivity, absolute freedom of speech, freedom of expression. It's the reason it's a successful economy is they allow innovation. They allow people to share ideas. And I hope that's a lesson that Vietnam can continue to learn. And again, I'm optimistic. I think the future will get better and better for the people of Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We have a question here from the back.